come on in. We're just going to get started here. So, let's see. There's a chair here and a chair here, and somebody could sit at Kim's desk in the back. I think there's a nice, comfy chair back there, and one here. Yeah. If either of you ladies want, there's another chair up front here. Oh, and Kim's coming with more chairs. Yeah. It is getting that way. All right, as we're getting ready to start here, if you would like a copy of my presentation with all the links that are embedded in it, you can go to this bit.ly address up here. It's 2EXM2 1U. So if you want to grab that at any time, feel free. My name is John Sifert. I am a Spanish teacher in Belmont, Iowa. Anybody know where Belmont's at? We're a really tiny town. Ooh, a few people. Awesome. We're a very small school district, but I've been teaching there just for like the last 3 years, but this was my 21st year overall, though. So I've been around a little bit, and I'm very blessed to be teaching in my home district, the one that I grew up in, the one that I lived in most of my life, and I have 3 out of 5 of my kids in class right now, so that is amazing. I love it so much, and I actually have children that are not like, oh, Dad, go away, so they all seem to be okay with that. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to let you know ahead of time, there's probably not going to be much time for Q&A at the end, so if you got a question, please just ask it during the presentation. Just jump in any time, because I'm going to use this whole 55 minutes, and maybe, I honestly, I probably need more, but we've got 55, so we're going to go with that. All right, so let's get moving here. First up, I want to, let me see if this is working. As every teacher knows, we need to know how to maximize our time with students in the classroom. Here's one estimate, 540 hours we get with kids. That's if you see them for 4 years. And that's not including, of course, assemblies, early outs, snow days like this year, holy cow. And that's not much time at all. So we've got to know, how are we going to spend that time? So what's going to be the most effective use of time? And one thing, of course, is reading. Why focus on reading? And that would be, first of all, it's research-based. As Stephen Krashen, our keynote speaker and presenter of several sessions today, has researched and talked about, this is one of my favorite quotes here, that word meanings, picking them up by reading is 10 times faster than intensive vocabulary instruction. And 10 times, that is amazing. If it's 10 times more effective, why would you not want to use it in your classroom? All right. Now, I'm going to kind of break this down into 3 stages for creating successful readers, or I guess 3 levels that I would say using reading in your classroom could be effective. I'm only focusing on the 3rd one today because we're here to talk about FVR, like free volunteer reading, or if you call it silent sustained reading. The other 2 here, I kind of, for my model in my head, based it on the kind of like I do, we do, you do kind of thing, but instead saying I read, you, or we read, and you read. Now the I read section of that is what we would call kindergarten reading, or where you read to the students, and it can be as simple as you reading something to them, or doing the whole kindergarten style reading, which has become pretty popular nowadays in world languages, where you're up front reading maybe even from a big book if you have the luxury of owning those. They might sit on the carpet, somebody might even bring in cookies and milk, and you actually read to them just like as you would in elementary school, which is amazing, because when you were that age, everybody loved that. That's a great thing to bring back even for high schoolers. High schoolers still love that. If you tell them you can bring treats and they just have to sit on the carpet like crisscross applesauce, that's an amazing thing. And you can still use techniques, TPRS, CI kind of techniques to circle things in the book, take a look at pictures, discuss what's going on in the book, and still engage them with this kind of style of reading. Now, We Read is more focused like on classroom, whole class novels. And this is kind of my suggestion, that you start off with the I Read, starting off where you're reading to students first. They're not ready to read independently yet. And then stage 2, We Read, doing things like whole class novels, where they have this kind of scaffolding built in where everybody's reading the same information. You are there to assist them if they need that extra help and they're not completely independent. Because if you throw them in independently to reading right away, they're going to fail and they're going to hate reading more than some of them already do. And we're going to talk about that a lot, actually. So whole class novels, what I would say would be stage 2 in the reading process. Now stage 3, what we're going to be talking about is you read. The student reads independently. FVR, SSR, however you want to call your program. Now, for me, I need to know why that's important. And for my major point here would be, we want reading to equal pleasure again. If you take a look at, well, let me say this actually. If you think about how you would want to treat reading, how many of you would say you're a reader now? Like you enjoy reading, okay? Majority of teachers do. Somewhere along the way, we were able to keep up our pleasure reading. We enjoy reading still. But if we started doing this to each other, like imposing rules on their reading lives, like let's say you go to the library or you're on Amazon and you buy a new book and you find out at the end, there's a 100-question quiz that you need to get a 90% on before you can buy another book. Guess what? You're going to be like, no, thanks anyways, I'm just going to go watch the movie. And that's what our students do. If you assign all of these extra things to it, they're going to equate reading with homework, reading with work, reading with boredom. And that has happened way, way too many times for our students, even before they've come to our classroom. So again, reading equals pleasure. This is how we started out our reading lives, having some wonderful adult, a parent maybe, a grandparent, somebody else in our family reading to us. This style of reading, close contact, lots of emotion, connections. This is the first stage in us loving books, loving reading. Then along the way, you became an independent reader. You were able to explore the world, ideas, new stories, using your imagination through reading on your own. Still enjoyed reading. Usually around middle to late elementary school, this is what reading becomes. It becomes a chore. It becomes book reports, book talks, comprehension questions. Anybody in their elementary school or for your own children, do you have like reading counts in your elementary schools? It's an online program that, like for my kids, almost destroyed reading for like 2 or 3 of my 5 children. Because what they do is every time they read a book in class, whether it's free reading or a class book, they have to take a quiz. They take a 10-question quiz and they have to score 7 out of 10 before they can read another book in the classroom. And if they don't score 7 out of 10, the assignment now is read the book again, the entire book again, take the quiz again, and then if you score, you can move on. If not, guess what? Read the book a 3rd time. Read the book a 4th time. I don't know about you. I love books, but if I have to read the same book over and over again, I'm going to just stop. I'm not going to care anymore. And programs and things like that, I know their intent. They're trying to improve reading comprehension, but maybe they're improving reading comprehension, but they're getting rid of the love of reading. And that's what's going to push our students the farthest with reading, is them enjoying it, the pleasure, reading for pleasure. That's what's going to push them the farthest. Which leads me to sneaky reason to use FVR number 1. I'm going to pop in a few of these here. The first one is this. We need to students, I would probably say, if I had to estimate from my own students over the last 21 years, I would say 90% of them think reading is boring or bad or equals homework. I've got that 10%, that they walk in your class, they have a book, they sit down, they open up their reading until the second you tell them to put it away or you give them a dirty look. And then as soon as they are done with something, they bring it back out and they're reading again, trying to get like another half a paragraph in before you say, hey, come on, back to here. That's the kind of thing we wish we had. I want my students to be like, oh, I just really want to read this book again. I'm going to wait till Senor starts talking again, and I'm going to be reading a few more pages, get a couple more paragraphs in, and then maybe I'll sneak it out under my desk again. That's what we want. We would love to have our students be trying to read in the language any chance they got. So we're trying to bring that feeling back. Now, the next step is talking about what kind of materials do you need? Like, what's going to make a successful FVR program? And again, I didn't say it up front, but most of these things are my opinions. The things that aren't my opinions, I pulled straight from other people, and I'll try to mention their names, whether it's Mike Pito or people like Scott Benedict right here, or other people that I might have pulled information from. So, you need comprehensible, engaging, varied reading materials. Let's take a look at the first one, comprehensible. Now, what does that mean? It usually means that they need to know minimum 90% of the words in a book. If they pick up a book, they should, if they feel they want to read independently and be successful, know 90% of what's going on, of the vocabulary that's in here, before they try to read it. Now, ideally, it's more like 98%. So the higher, the better. Some of you may have seen, anybody seen this before, by Marcos Benavides? This is a fairly famous example of what it'd be like to not have comprehension. Just because for the sake of time, I'm going to kind of speed through this here, so I'm not going to give you as much time as you want to read it. You can always get my presentation online and you can read it through a little more thoroughly. But if you look at this, most of this is comprehensible. There's a couple words like where is it right here? Borgel, and down here we got schnooling and schnool, which are evidently the same word or different forms of the same word here. And this is fairly comprehensible. This is at 98%. You give a student a book with this many words that they don't understand, they're probably going to still be successful and not be turned off from it. Here's the next little passage. If you look at this, we've got words like phi and kron kafoon. Oh, viggling. Here's a sentence. He is viggling towards the kron kafoon. They're going to be lost. They're not going to get that. And there's lupity, and there's words like nani, nais, and gleep, and frickles. And this, if you read through this, this could turn off a lot of your students. You could lose a lot of comprehension here, and this is at 90%. This is what I was saying is your minimum. This might be too low already, all right? Now, here's a third example. I am going to read this one to you. It says, "Bingle for help, you shout. This lupity is dying." You put your fingers on her neck. Nothing. Her flit is not weefling. You take out your Jupil and Bingle 119, the emergency number in Japan. There's no answer. Then you muchi that you have a new before a single. It's from your gut ring Yivi. She honoris at Tokyo University. You play the a single. "If you get this," Evie says, "I can't Vicarn now. The important pass it is." Suddenly she looks around. Dingle. "Oh no, they're here. Crippet, the fro. Waspel them on the frib." Beep. The single parlantals. Then you could tune something behind you. Now, this is 80%, right? Oops, if it's going to go. There we go. It's 80%. Just in this little short piece here, you're not going to know what's going on. And imagine page after page of this. Your students are done. They're not going to finish reading this book. And if you give them another book like this, not going to read that either. They're going to feel unsuccessful. They're not going to be able to get anything from it. It's not comprehensible. And this is 80%. 80%, like if somebody would have told me that early in my career, "Oh, my students already understand 80% of this," that sounds like a great deal. But this is 80%. If we see this as 80%, that's not comprehensible. Students aren't going to be successful. There might be some. Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things I've noticed with my kids is they will pick up some of the like super bebe pañal, which are like the Captain Underpants.
Yeah.
The language, it's beyond this.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's way beyond, and especially because they misspell words purposely so that they can
To be funny.
new.
Yeah.
It's not intended for language learners.
No.
But those are my students' favorite books, and they're in regular 3. And so I think sometimes, like, I don't know if there's research behind this. I'm sure that there probably is. But when there are visuals that accompany the language, then they're able to go, like, they will prefer that to even choosing some that are actually written more at their level, just because they're so engaged with the visual. I've had kids come and tell me they've learned new words because they really like the picture. So.
Yeah, exactly. Graphic novels or anything with illustrations, anything that helps scaffold their learning. This is kind of based, I'm saying 90% or 80% or 98%, whatever we're talking about, with no extra scaffolding, like illustrations. Illustrations is an amazing way to give them an extra leg up. That's why some of, I was just holding this book earlier, Craig Klein's book, who's selling books out here, some of his books, there's many illustrations on every single page. That's going to help them. This is going to be a much easier book than, let's see, I don't know, I'm going to pick Las Sombras. This is more like a level 3 book. This one has very few illustrations. Like many novels, it has 1 or 2 a chapter, which is very common, but that's at a higher level than something by, like most of Craig Klein's book, for example. Yeah, definitely, that's a great point. And I'm going to mention a little bit more about that in a little bit. No, you're good. You're good. I'd rather have you jump in because I'm afraid I'm going to miss some of this stuff anyways. We're going to run out of time. All right. So comprehensible is what we're talking about. Also engaged and varied. Your materials need to be engaging and varied. For example, what doesn't work for beginning readers? Just talking about beginning readers, not talking about advanced readers or readers that are motivated to go off and try things on their own. Doesn't work. Books written for Spanish speakers, not Spanish learners. So books for native speakers where their L1 is, sorry, I shouldn't use Spanish every time, language speakers, language learners. So German, Latin, whatever it might be. Most of the time around here, those are Spanish speakers. All right, for example, books by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Isabel Allende, authentic texts like newspapers that you could find online, El Mundo, whatever it happens to be. These are great to include in your libraries, in your classrooms, but for beginning readers, they are going to get very little benefit from this. On the flip side, Spanish books written for children can be tricky too for other reasons, all right? Let's take a look at one of these pages here. Here's just a random page out of there. First thing that I noticed is it's written for someone that's probably had about 8 years of native Spanish behind them, 24/7. They've had tens of thousands of hours of exposure to language, not the 540 that they're going to get at the end of Latin 4, Spanish 4, French 4, German 4. So they've had tens of thousands of hours, so yeah, this is probably a little more comprehensible to them. Or this is actually written for their parents to read to them. So they're going to get the language orally and not by visual. One thing I also noticed about this passage is this little cute formatting, like crooked lines and all the words are kind of shoved together as they're being said fast. That interferes with comprehension too. That actually takes away, the words are taking away from the comprehension in this case because of fonts or style or things that are cute if you already understand the language. But when you're trying to focus on language, that's a barrier. That's an obstacle. So you have to be really careful about what you're throwing out there. Yes.
Sorry,
No.
I think this is just my instinct
Yeah.
and my experience with my students is if it's a book that they know and they've read
Oh,
1,000 times, they're
Dr.
like
Seuss.
like they know what this should say in English, and so they're able to even pick up some of the structures
Oh, yeah.
that are kind of beyond the level that they're at because
Right.
they're like, yes, oh, this is how you say green eggs, you know.
No, exactly. That's why I have Dr. Seuss books in my library, because sometimes kids are drawn to that. You're trying to have an expansive library to draw in kids in any way possible. And if that's what it takes, something that they're already familiar with, then do that. Whatever can draw them back into reading. That's making reading pleasurable is probably, I know we're trying to get them to learn a new language, but you kind of have to get them to like, at least, if not love the language again for that to happen, especially when you're making them or asking them to do something independently. So besides this, what does work? Books written for Spanish learners. And there is a variety of things. I'm going to share with you my three favorite types of books to include in my library, and I also include some that besides my three favorite types, I'm going to include some others as well. Number one, TPRS or CI novels. It used to be when I first started making or creating my library, maybe around 8-10 years ago, there was probably a dozen books, all by Blaine Ray for the most part. Now, there are new books coming out all the time. Today, I just saw an ad for Adriana Ramirez. She just put out a book called Julio, I think I just saw this morning. And she just put out a book last month, too, so she's amazing. Yes,
it's
really
good.
Yes.
It's pretty advanced, I thought, but
Yeah.
it's really good.
Yeah, I'll be ordering that very soon. And the new one, Julio. But yeah, now, instead of having like about a dozen novels, when I first started out trying to do this, there's, I think, right around 130, 140 novels in Spanish. There are a couple dozen in French. Latin is fairly prolific. There are several Latin teachers out there that have put out, some of them 10, 15, 20 books each. And so they have a fairly good amount of resources there. German not so much, Italian not so much, but hopefully some of these will be translated as the years go by. Going along with that, like if you're going to try to talk about having a library, you usually want to have more than one copy of a book at a time. My suggestion is this. First, buy one copy. Get one copy. See how much you like it. See if your students will be interested. You know your students better than anybody else, so I can't recommend, yes, this is the perfect book for you, or this is the perfect book for you, or this book, or whatever, because you know what your students are interested in. I would try, if you've got the resources, to be as diverse as possible, because you never know when you might get that student that Peter va a Colombia, or Juliana, or Vida y Muerte is going to appeal to them. So I start out with one copy. I buy one copy of any new novel that comes out there, see if it's going to be useful for my library, and then from there I decide how many more copies I want. I usually have 2 to 3 copies per book in my library. Unless it's super popular, then I might have, for example, this one, El Brasilete Mágico by Margarita Perez Garcia. I think I have 5 in my library because it is so good. This is one of my favorite books, one of my favorite novels ever. So, and this is going to be a series. She's going to be working on another one. She has other books out, Juliana, and she's coming out one, Itipuru, which is coming out very soon. It's about a penguin from New Zealand. I helped her proofread that one. It's really good. It's at an easy level, and it's so interesting. It's so good, so good. She's a great author. Margarita Perez Garcia. So, yes, sir.
And maybe somebody else has experienced this. Do you guys ever find that the levels that they talk about don't match up with what you see. 'Cause I've seen a lot where I think it's just they know that there are more students in level 1, and they know that that makes the money. So there's a lot of stuff that says a good level 1 is like this. Not.
Oh, I agree. I
So,
definitely agree.
I was just wondering if I was completely off base there, if anybody else has noticed.
Either that or I'm a sucky teacher, because my level 1 kids are not going to be able to read that book, not without a lot of scaffolding and help from me. So, and like maybe that is the reason, but I don't know. But yeah, I agree. They market a lot of level 1s. There must be a huge wide range of level 1s, because some of those novice low books, there's no way they're novice low. So, and maybe novice intermediate. I mean, not novice mid, novice high. Some of them I think are even intermediate low for those novice books. But I agree. That's why you buy a book. Check out one copy before you go invest and get 16 copies of it or class set. Find out first. Don't commit yourself, because these novels are usually $6 to $8 a piece. $6 isn't a breaker of the bank. But you go out and buy $20, $30 worth of a book and find out, oh, my kids are never going to read this. So you just wasted all that money, whether it's requisitions or out of your own pocket, like a lot of teachers. So just be careful. Start off small. All right, that leads me to sticky reason to use FVR number 2. And that is getting a kid to say, I read an entire book in another language. This is powerful. Having a kid that hasn't read a book since maybe 4th grade, and who usually brags about that, like, yeah, I've been doing the same book report for English class since I was 6. You know, being able to say that they've read an entire book, and yet in Latin, in Spanish, in German, that is powerful motivation. Nothing motivates more than success. And if you can help them be successful in reading in your classroom, it might be that German is the only place that they feel comfortable reading now, or they enjoy reading in Spanish. They still hate reading in English, but Spanish, oh, that's awesome. I love reading in Spanish now. So that can be super powerful. All right, my second favorite type of book is leveled readers. Now, for those students that maybe are quite not ready for a novel independently, I like leveled readers. For example, I'm using Reading A to Z. There's other companies and other websites. This one is a subscription-based one. I think it's somewhere around $120 a year. Now, to not necessarily get around that, but you might find that an elementary teacher at your school already has a subscription and is more than happy to let you use their login, because really they're using the English side of the program, because they have thousands of books in English, leveled readers, and you can use the ones in Spanish or in French or whatever language you teach. What you do is you get an online subscription to this. You can print these out. For example, here's one that, yeah, let's go with this one. This one's actually, they're normally leveled A through Z. That's what it's called, Reading A to Z. This one's actually below A. It's called an AA. And so, for example, it's titled Blanco, right? And on the first page, it says, La nieve blanca. Las flores blancas. It's as simple as you can get. All right, so the white snow, the white flowers, that kind of thing. And you can print these out. Since I'm putting them in my library, I laminate them. I'm a big laminator. I've got my own machine like a lot of teachers do, and I order them by, 300 sheets at a time, 500 sheets at a time, just because I know I'm going to go through them. And our school has one of those old-fashioned binding machines. That works perfectly for these. Some of these books in my library have been in there for 12 years, and they're still in really, really good shape. I haven't had to replace a single one in a dozen years. So, and I've got, I probably have about 120 of these that I've got in my library. So, a lot of variety. Yes?
Something I found super successful with my level ones, we start reading like week 2, was those books.
Yeah.
And not even those, like Scholastic had, but it's nonfiction.
Sure.
So even Scholastic has like Insectos or whatever, and they found that they've read all those books and they are so familiar with all the nonfiction that they could read them very easily.
Lots of cognates.
Last year was the first year I did only nonfiction in the beginning, and it was really successful.
That is awesome. Yeah. Whatever, you know your students best. I'm giving you my suggestions, my ideas. You know your students, do what's best for them. This is just one take on it. In fact, there were 3 other presenters that were talking about FVR today. Now that we're down to 2, plus Diane Neubauer's talking about whole class reading, which in my book is the stage 2 there, that step 2 of reading. Go see their presentations. They're going to have some of the same things to say as I do. Might be some that are completely different. Use what works for you. Don't just take my word for it. Okay? All right, so there are lots of readers there. Like I said, I know a first grade teacher in our school that has a subscription. I use her login, and I can print out the Spanish ones. So I don't really, I suppose it's a little bit of double dipping maybe, but really I'm using a different part of the website. So we're just utilizing all of our resources. So Number 3, again, if your kids are not even ready for leveled readers, using class-created stories could be a great addition to your library. Now, actually that should have come first. If you are a TPRS or a CI teacher, you might be doing one-word images, you might be doing invisibles or telling TPRS-style stories already. Why not save those and add them to your library? All right? So you can create these kind of books yourself. That's the most time-consuming because you're doing all the work. You could also, if you use classroom jobs, I'm a big fan of classroom jobs, and you can assign an artist to you might have an artist, if you're doing this kind of story already, to draw the pictures. A story detail writer, that is a person that while you're telling a TPRS story up here, they're writing down, or in my case, typing into a Google Doc, the details of what's going on in class, then they just share it with you, and bam, you have everything that you talked about in that class already saved in a written form. And an author. So you might have 3 jobs. The one that's going to kind of compile all this together and author the book, even though they're just putting in the illustrations and putting in the words all together. A third option could be to use a template that's already out there and give that to students as a project. For example, Mike Pito has this as a blank template, and this is free. There's a link in my presentation for his blank templates. This is all blank. There's no pictures, no words. What he does is they tell a story together, and at the end of the story, he takes the words and he types them into the blank template. Still no pictures. After a few stories, Mike will print out copies of this, distribute them to the class, and they have, as a comprehension check, it's a great review, take those words and they have to illustrate the picture. So they need to know, they need to have understood what was going on in class before. So it's a great comprehension check for them. Plus, when he gets done, he now, let's say a class of 20, if he did 3 different stories, he now has 7 or 8 copies of this story. He can choose his best ones, stick them in his library, and now he has more reading material. And if you do that every time you tell stories, every class period, every level, you're going to have dozens and dozens of new things to read that students are familiar with the vocabulary. They're interested because their classmates made them, and they want to see, hey, what did Latin 2 or Spanish 2 do for their story last week? I want to see, I want to read what they did. Because they know, oh, the artist is my best friend. I want to see what he drew. It's hilarious. He's so funny when he draws. This is a great way to add stuff, and it's fairly cheap. You're pretty much just printing it out. You're taking a little class time, or you could assign it as homework, maybe, possibly. Again, I really caution against homework. I'm not a big fan of homework, especially when it has to do with reading. We're trying to build reading at equals pleasure. That's probably my main point here. Another one, Mike Pito has one. Both of these are available if you press on these links from Teachers Pay Teachers. Spanish plans. He has another template, which I'm going to show you in a second. This is Justin Bueller. And the other one is from Mike Pito, from My Generation of Polyglots. That's their TPT store names. So right there. What's that? I'm sorry? Yeah, both of these are on Teachers Pay Teachers. The store name is Spanish Plans. The other one is My Generation of Polyglots. Both of these are free templates. The one I just showed you, and then this one. Let me show you a story that my class did. All right. So this is using Justin's template. We had a story about a sad bottle, La Botella Triste, right? And it's sad because it's a ketchup bottle and it's filled with mustard. Okay. So we were doing an OWI, a one-word image story. On his template, there's a space for a glossary. This would be folded in half. So this is actually the front cover and the inside of the front cover. You fold this sheet of paper in half, laminate it that way, staple it together, however you want to bind it. And what I did, this was one that I created, so it's a little more in-depth, and I noticed a mistake, so don't kill me right there, that's wrong. But I create a glossary with every single word in the book, because if you look, some students recognize cognates and some don't. Like in the context, plato should be a really easy cognate, but you never know when you have a kid that's not going to recognize that. So don't assume cognates are understandable. So this is the inside cover, then it goes through the story, everything that was in our Google Doc, I put it in there for the students, and then it tells a little quick story. I'm not going to really take too much time to read through it with you guys. But it goes on, he's trying to figure out a way not to be sad, not to be filled with mustard anymore. He tries to get rid of his mustard, and now he's empty, but still he's, in the story, he's still empty inside. So he doesn't like what he is. He still wants ketchup. And then he realizes there's no ketchup anywhere except for in heaven. In heaven there is ketchup. So, of course, in most high school, junior high classes, guess what happens? He gets rid of himself. So he breaks himself. Guess what? He's in heaven. He's full of ketchup and everybody's happy. I don't know about you, but I have a lot of stories that somebody's got to die during this story. Somebody's got to die during our stories. And a ketchup bottle, I'm okay with. This is okay. An empty ketchup bottle is an okay death for me. I don't want to get too graphic. I try to keep it PG, but that I'm okay with. All right, and there's the back cover. But that's a free template you can get from Spanish Plans as well. All right, let's see. Okay, those are just some other OWIs and stories. And if you don't do TPRS style stories in your class, there are so much great stuff. Or creating invisibles, OWIs. There's so much great material that you're missing out on. This is one of my favorite stories, real quick. The students came up with this balloon. I don't even remember the balloon's name anymore, but está enamorado, right? It was in love. It happened to be in love with a cactus, of course, right? So that's going to cause a problem. They are not going to get together. And the kids don't even know the plot of this book, but I instantly thought, oh, the gift of the Magi. Where what happens is they each wanted to sacrifice something for them, each other, so that they could get together, so they could hug. So the balloon filled itself with sand. That way it wouldn't get popped, but now it can no longer float. The cactus goes and gets all of its little spine shaved off, and so it's not really a cactus anymore. It's kind of a regular plain plant, and it's kind of boring. But that way you can hug the balloon. So they kind of like traded things to like be with each other, and I was like, oh, it's so sweet. I'm gonna cry. But and sometimes my kids came up with it all on their own. I didn't really have any input on it, and I'm like, oh. And so then we could even connect that to a gift of Magi. I was looking for a Spanish version of it to have them read, but it didn't work out. But still, you can create some amazing stories and then put them in your library for future years to see that. Did I bring that book? Oh, no, I didn't bring that one. But La Botella Triste. This is that same book right here. And same thing here, El Esqueleto. There's a story just about a skeleton. And of course, the skeleton doesn't want to be undead anymore. It actually wants to die. But yeah, all the stories about death. I'm sorry. So this one wasn't. This one was beautiful. Not about that. Okay, other kinds of reading. Those are my top three. Like what I feel is the most effective for my classroom library. Of course, scholastic magazines, Allons-y, Das Rad. I'm probably butchering those. Sorry. Graphic novels, things written by other teachers, picture dictionaries. There's so many good things out there that you can include to try to fill in those gaps for students that may not connect with other things. So you can use these too. I'm not saying that these are bad. I've just found these not to be quite as effective in my classroom. Also things like novels made for Spanish speakers or language speakers. And those are great for advanced students, dedicated students, native speakers. But you got to be careful. You don't want to have that be the majority, the bulk of your library, because that's going to turn them off. You got to be careful. So all of these things, of course. Viva Iowa is a free newspaper that's out of Hampton, Iowa, which is near me. It comes out twice a month, and for a long time they would just deliver to my school. They'd send me 30 copies for free, and I could put that out. It's amazing. I know other parts of Iowa have similar things. So if you have those kind of things, feel free to share, and I can share out too. But yeah, it's free, and a lot of times my kids will be like, hey, I know that person, or like, hey, that's me, because it's local news. They will translate, there'll be native speakers that translate local articles into Spanish. I'm like, it can't get any better. Like, my students are on the front page, and it's about them in Spanish, and I didn't have to write it. It's amazing, amazing. So, where to get these materials? These are all links, again, in my presentation, so you don't have to write all these down. You can just go here and click on them if you want to. The top two, Fluency Matters, TPR's books. Those are the big, I don't want to say companies, because there's still almost everyone there is still a teacher out in the classroom. So I don't want you to think that I think they're big conglomerates, but they're the two big names in CI novels, all right? Now, actually in the last few years, independent authors now outnumber, novel-wise, the big two companies, the big companies. And so if you need a resource, go to Mike Pito's site, CI Reading, click on that link, and he and Martina Bex have compiled a list of all the novels that are out there. It's fairly up to date. Usually as soon as somebody mentions a new book to them, they add it to the list. And that has, in Spanish, like I said, like 130, 140 books, French a few dozen, Latin a few dozen, a few German, a few Spanish, Spanish, Japanese, and other languages. Great resource. Reading A to Z, all these other ones that you can read for yourself. We also have some of Martina Bex's stuff. If I can get my, maybe it's not going to work. Martina Bex's stuff, like Revista Literal, this one right here. This is a free online magazine where students submit their stories to her. They get edited, and then they get put out to everybody, and it's free. She, of course, has El Mundo en tus manos, which is just one that she writes. This is a subscription to, I think it's around $80 a year, something like that. And I print them out, put them in little page protectors, and I've got just a little ring. And they sit there either in a little binder, they hang on little magnets on my wall, whatever I want to do with them. And it's up-to-date news articles put into Spanish at a comprehensible levels. And I think they're revamping it this year. I think they're putting it in every article. I think is going to be at 3 different levels, if I remember right. So she puts in a lot of work. So that's why it's $80 a year. It comes out bi-weekly, if I remember right. So once every 2 weeks. Sorry.
Well, it's going out every week this year.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Another
And that's
author.
gonna go back, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry to
Maris
interrupt.
Hopkins joined her, but-
Yeah. Martina was going to do 1 week, and then Maris the opposite week, right? And you have a choice. Yeah, you have a choice. You can either subscribe to the bi-weekly or the weekly. The bi-weekly is probably more money, would be my guess. So I only went to the every other week, the original Martinez ones. So. I have occasionally done articles together to share as a class if I thought it was really compelling, really interesting, and I wanted to know about that cultural topic or whatever it is. Otherwise, it's part of my FVR library. So, all right, I need to keep moving because we're more than halfway done. All right, how to afford an FVR library? This is like a huge question. Like, no one has enough money. Nobody says, "Oh yeah, I just buy every single book there is, and I have 400 copies of them. It's great. I don't know what your problem is." No one says that. If you already say that I'm moving to your school district, just let me know. I will be there. First one, ask your administrator. If you are that lucky soul that has an administrator, you come in, you say, "Hey, I need more books in my library. Here's the research that backs it up. This is going to be one of the most useful things for my kids." And your administrator says, "Let's do it." Bless you, bless you, bless you. There are a few out there. So you might as well take a chance. At least have this be a starting point of saying why you need more requisition money or why you might need libraries now or for whatever reason. Emily.
Is it just because no? Sometimes talk to your superintendent. I know I had submitted a grant that had to go through the superintendent's office. He forgot to actually turn it in and said, "Oh, sorry, I missed the deadline. So we're just going to order these for you anyway."
Nice.
And it was about $500 worth of books.
Nice. That is amazing. So,
Sometimes
what's your
the
administrator's name?
superintendent will be
Like, we're going to get him in our school. So.
Sometimes superintendents will be willing to spend the money too, even if the principal's a little leery of it.
Yeah, follow the chain of command, but if you don't get your results, you can always keep going. Yeah, that's a great idea. All right, besides that, if, again, you're in a lucky school district that has textbook money, like a rotation, like social studies 1 year, math the next year, foreign language the next year, and you stay on the rotation, like you're just like, "Oh, we got to wait for a year." If you have that, why not bring up saying we don't need new textbooks because that's the traditional vocabulary instruction, the one that's 10 times less effective, like things like textbooks, then why not ask for books? For example, let's say a textbook only costs $100. They're more than that. And you only needed 100 copies. At 4 levels, you're probably going to need more than 100 copies or 100 textbooks. That's 10 grand, which equals 1,428 novels. If you're a Spanish teacher, that means you could have six copies of every novel that's out there at that much. So, no, more than 6 copies. I don't know where I got that number from. It should be more than that. But anyways, that's a lot of novels. 1,400 novels. Think about a library of 1,400 novels. That's amazing. You would have the best library around. So if you can convince them of that, why not? Like if they're going for that, or you could say, "Hey, you know what? New textbooks are going to cost $10,000. I'm going to make you a great deal. Let's spend $5,000 in novels. School district can keep the other $5 grand. Win-win, right? They might be all over that. Hey, we just saved us $5 grand, and you got all the novels that you wanted. Because 5,000 novels, that's a lot of novels. And honestly, most districts are spending more than 10 grand on a class or teacher's novels. I mean, textbooks. 80,000, is that what you said? Yeah. I'm lowballing it. I'm trying to give you a good place to work from. You know what I mean? All right, local grants. I found this to be super effective too. Pretty much everything up here I've had success with in one way or another. Local grants like community organizations. I had a grant in northern Iowa for just the local counties there, and I applied for a grant, and I got $600. I got 60 books plus a revolving display that I'll show you in another picture here off of that grant. PTO came in and asked, "Hey, teachers, what do you need? You need markers? You need glue?" And I said, "Hey, you want to buy me some books?" And they bought me a dozen books. Hey, I have 12 new books in my classroom. Foundations out there, contests. There are great contests. Fluency Matters had a contest at Christmas time a couple years ago. They were giving away individual novels, class sets of novels. I was super all over that. So I won a class set of novels. I won an audiobook. I won an online subscription to a novel that I chose, and it was amazing. Anytime somebody says free or a chance for free books, I'm there. I am there. State teacher organizations. That's a little hard to read in here, I'm sorry. I know, any teachers from Wisconsin? Nobody from Wisconsin here? I know their state organization gives away grants. IWLA gives away money for grants. Here's what I'm going to say. Year before last, I applied for grants. I got it. Right? I'm going to be spending some of the money today at those booths out there. And they later told me 3 people applied for the grant, and they give away 2. I had a 67% chance even putting in a crap application if possible. So then after that, people like Allison Wienhold and other members of the group were out there talking about, hey, people didn't apply for a grant. We only had 3 people apply this year. I heard that at several conferences. I saw that online. I thought, oh, this year there are a lot more people who apply. Guess how many people applied? 3. 3 again. They're giving away 2 grants. Almost everybody that applied is going to get a grant. Apply. I saw people at other conferences. I was at Allison Wienhold's conference in her hometown, Dunkerton, Iowa, and I saw people writing down, oh yeah, we should apply, we should apply. I saw like a dozen people write that information down. Even if all the applicants were in that room, 75% of them didn't apply that thought about it. Apply. If you're from Iowa, apply for this grant. Applications are probably, I don't know if they're being accepted for next year, but I know that this year's applicants, there was only 3 again that'll be announced at the one in the fall. Oh my goodness. It's almost free money. And honestly, I think you can apply every 3rd year. So even if you're a winner, 3 years from now, you can apply again. If still 3 people are only applying, you're going to get a lot of money every 3 years. So take advantage. Of course, there's GoFundMe, Donors Choose. I've done a Donors Choose, and in a few weeks, I got, I think, about $600 worth of novels again. So I'm using every resource I can. If it's 10 times as effective, why not put a ton of effort into doing this in my classroom? And then I put down any other creative ideas, robbing a bank, anything?
Librarians usually have a budget.
Oh,
And so we always get our librarian, they do a lot of books and we can rotate them in and out. And so they do that a lot for us.
Excellent. Yeah, have somebody else spend their money for you. Great.
We have a, like Honor Society, Sociedad, at our school, and so what we've created is a mobile library that teachers can check out. And so we bought
great.
like those card stands and like some of the, like one of the wooden, like rolly ones. And so we've used, funds to purchase that, and then we're kind of sharing it with the other teachers. And the way that we got the funds was through teaching Spanish in the elementary schools in an after-school program.
Oh, nice.
And so the parents just each throw in $25 for a kid that they want to come for 6 weeks after school, an hour. We provide them all kinds of fun, candy and all the, like games and activities and whatever, but we're still making money off of that, and it's going back into our free volunteer.
Like, if it's a fundraiser and it's going to books, people are going to contribute to that. I mean, it's books. It's not like you're buying...
No, they're just paying for their
Oh,
books
well,
to take.
there you go.
But that's just
Maybe
one of
even
the things
promote
we've been
that.
using the
Yeah.
funds for, so.
Yeah, promote that you're buying books with it. You might even get
Yeah.
donations. Like parents can be like, "Oh, I'll give you an extra $5." I mean, it's going back to the school. It's not like it's going to your salary, which wouldn't be a bad use of the money.
And this
either.
year we had a bilingual reading night, and so we brought like some of the really basic like little kids books and
Nice.
like had cookies and had the parents come with their kids and read at the elementary level.
That's great promotion for your program. That's amazing. That's great. Great.
Should have had a place for donations.
Yes, ma'am.
We had somebody in our district who did Donors Choose as well, and we have a couple of districts in a neighboring, city, and she just was able to make it aware to some of those bigger companies that were in. They came in and they filled out their whole Donors Choose.
That's
And she,
great.
so our English teachers created her whole curriculum, like the novel-based curriculum for students. So, I mean, if you can get the word out on some of your bigger organizations in your community or neighboring communities, you just never know. And it's been able to totally redo her whole curriculum in the last 2 years. She's a second grade teacher.
Yeah, it's okay to ask. It's okay to ask. I mean, it's for books. You're not like, taking them to Disneyland or something like that. You're like just trying to get them to read. Nobody thinks, oh, reading, bad idea. No, not for that. So, yeah.
Okay, I just now had this here idea. Did anybody talk to having your public library in your community use any of their budget or anything that you could for these types of books?
I have not asked. I personally haven't asked. I mean, my library has a small section in Spanish, but it's pretty minuscule.
Like I said, this
Yeah.
occurred to me seconds ago, so I was just wondering, they got, obviously that's what they do with their lives.
Yeah.
Books and find books, so I don't know if they'd be willing to check them out to you as a teacher. And
Oh, yeah. You could make suggestions like you think would be useful books and then, check them out. That'd be a great, yeah, any ideas you have. Like, the more you can get books in the kids' hands, that's a great idea. All right, I'm going to move along. Penny pincher tip. Sometimes, some conferences, especially big companies like Fluency Matters, the smaller companies not so much, okay? But the bigger companies sometimes buy 3, get 1 free, or 4 books for $20. So sometimes when you come to these conferences, you can get a good deal. We don't have any of the big, like Fluency Matters or TPRS books here, but if you go to IWLA, sometimes they're there, or you go to some bigger conferences like Central States or NTPRS or that kind of thing. You can get some great deals on cheap books there. Or Comprehensible Midwest is a great place too. All right, talking about displaying books. I'm going to hustle. We only have 10 minutes. Okay, let's see. Displaying books. This, super neat, colorful, labeled, amazing. Any issue you could see with this? I'm not trying to put this teacher down, but is there any improvement, I guess we could say, we could make to this library? You can't see anything. Okay. You can't see a single book. Nobody's like, oh, I want this orange 1/4-inch book here. Nobody's going to say, yeah, that's mine. That's the one I want. No, I was going to pick that one. You have no idea what's there. Okay. This, if you only have room for this, this is better than nothing. Don't get me wrong. But these kind of displays, much more useful. I'm sorry it's a little dark in here. I apologize. Having some of these cardboard stands, even if that's all you have for your library, great. Gutters are these plastic gutters or vinyl gutters have become really popular among world language teachers lately, where they're either, if you have great custodians or you're handy with tools yourself, that you screw them into the wall, or some people even use those command strips. Yeah, command strips are actually tough enough and strong enough to hold up vinyl gutters plus paperback books. Okay, I wouldn't put 30, 80 pounds of things on there, but books is okay. Also, if you've only got a small amount of space, even using a bookshelf, which you could normally fit 100 books on, maybe only displaying 8 on a shelf is just fine too, because then they can see the covers and go, oh, that looks like that is, that's Cinderella, or this book over here, oh, that looks like an interesting cover, I want to see more about that. Or here's some more gutters there from those A to Z books. She has an amazing amount of time. She has them color-coded on the side with different colored duct tape, and they're super neat. If she can keep them there like that every day, oh my goodness. Or have a classroom job where you have a librarian that takes care of that for you. All right, here's some other ones. People use pocket charts or the shoe racks, because these novels, again, are just about the same size as those pockets. They would fit in there very neatly if you want to just hang that up on your wall. Also, here's another penny pincher tip. Reserve a display that might be thrown out. Go to Staples, Target, Dollar General, a business that's going out, or a store that's going out of business. They will sometimes give away displays, or these cardboard ones that are only set up for back to school time or for Valentine's Day. Those get broken down and put in the trash compactor, and they get thrown out. Why not say, hey, would you be willing to save this for me? Let me give you my phone number. When you're getting rid of these stuff, talk to a manager, not just some high schooler that works there. And say, hey, would you save this for me? I would really, really love to own this when you're done. And then it's free. Emily.
They'll also, sometimes they won't give them to you free, but they'll sell them.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
For dirt cheap.
Oh, yeah.
I got one from Kmart when they went out of business for $10. It was originally for CDs, but.
Yeah.
And the
I'll talk
shelves are
about
all movable too, so I can have.
Oh, yeah. Anything you can do to be creative and to be cheap. We are teachers. We need to be cheap. We need to be cheap. All right, I'm going to show you real quick my library. I'm going to hustle through. This is my library. This is a big poster I made. This is just on top of my heating unit. But I just switched over, actually this year, deciding if I wanted to arrange them by level or genre. I don't think there's a right answer there. I used to, for many years, arrange them by level, like what I thought were novice low, novice mid, novice high, intermediate low level books. That works well for some, but it also sometimes can turn off students to a book they might be interested in, thinking, oh, that's going to be too hard for me. I'm not going to pick that book up. If you arrange by genre, like love and friendship, some of these categories I just made up just by the amount of the books I have for certain things. Action, adventure, mystery, nonfiction, whatever it might be, then sometimes they're more likely to pick up a book. And if they have that innate interest, it's sometimes a little bit, it's enough to get them over the hump. Let's say a book would only be 80% comprehensible, but if they've got an interest in that genre, that type of book, that might be enough for them to keep going and still comprehend and learn a lot from that book anyways. All right, so those, again, this isn't my thing, so if you want a copy of this, I'll be happy to just click on that link. This is my library, my classroom. If you notice, it takes up almost an entire wall of my room because I keep expanding it more and more and more. And it actually goes around the corner a little bit here too. So let me just show you a couple spots. I've got a little cardboard rack that I got free because some other teacher was throwing it out. And this is where I put like Scholastic magazines, People in Spanish, and El Mundo en Tus Manos from Martina Beck's. I've also got a wire rack over here that has two of my categories. realistic fiction and fantasy. And these are my divisions. These aren't the author divisions. They're just where I thought they fit best. You can decide. It's a great idea to read these novels as much as you can, so you know so you can recommend them to students. Here are the shelves that down below this. Each of these shelves easily could have held 60 books, but instead I'm only displaying 3 books, and I have a few off to the side. I've got categories like para adolescentes, so like teen fiction, which again, this is more meant for native speakers or people that understand the language or grew up with the language. And instead of calling it para niños, for kids, I said de la niñez, so from childhood. Like, oh, remember these books from when you were little, like Dr. Seuss books or Magic Treehouse in Spanish. That might interest them if they already had read it in the past. So I said, these are good childhood memory books. Don't you want to check this out? This might be great for you. Humor books, a lot of Craig Klein, lots of pictures, lots of illustrations, funny books. And then I've got a section of graphic novels. And honestly, I have probably 200 books that would fit into this category. I just can't put them all on the shelf. I put a few more over here because, to be honest, once kids realize that this language is sometimes above all my beginning readers, not many of these get checked out unless it's a kid favorite. You know what I mean? All right. Here's a free display that I got from a grocery store going out of business. This used to be a Hallmark rack. It is the perfect space and size for novels. Free. It was out by their dumpster. I asked, hey, are you throwing that away? And they're like, sure. I'm like, can I have it? Yeah, we don't even have room for all the stuff we're getting rid of. That was free. That holds, 40, 50 of these A to Z novels, or A to Z books. Free. And then this is a display rack that I bought with a community grant that I ordered books, and I got this. This is actually made for DVDs, and these novels, same size. Same exact size, same dimensions, fits perfectly in these. Each little rack holds 3 copies, or sometimes 4 copies of the same novel. They spin around. I have them divide up into genres too, with those little stickers in the corner that I put on there. So, but divided by genre instead of level. Okay, I've got 3 minutes. So, how to use your FVR time. When do students read? Short, frequent reading sessions. I'm going to go quickly. Start small, super important. You would rather have them begging for more than begging to stop. Okay? So, start small. 3 to 5 minutes at the beginning. Increase the time when it feels right. If kids are reading quietly, nobody's looking around, looking at the clock, looking at you, holding their book upside down, nodding off, maybe bump it up a minute. Go to 4 minutes. Then a few weeks later, if it's still working well, go to 5 minutes. Don't overdo it. If you can feel restlessness, stop. You can stop it early. You can tell them you're timing them yourself, and you can go over, you can go under. They don't have to know. Most of them aren't like going, go, and then they start reading. Like, it's up to you to decide. Here's my time frame, Spanish 1. I actually don't do FVR, like individual reading at all in Spanish 1. That's just my choice. Some people start very early. I would rather have wasted time and not had them read than have it start too early and ruin reading for them in my classroom. That's my perspective. Some people have a lot of success in Spanish 1 doing FVR. I start with kindergarten reading and whole class novels at the end of Spanish 1, but no FVR yet. That's just my call. You do what works best for you. And then in Spanish 2, we start second quarter, just Tuesdays and Thursdays, 3 to 5 minutes. Usually still not more than 5 minutes by the end of the year. And then in upper levels, 3 and 4, we do it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 8 to 10 minutes. Some teachers do it every day. My suggestion is don't do it like once a week or once every other week and then try to read for a whole period. That's not as effective. Lots of spaced, short repetition is going to get you much more gains. Okay. All right, how do students read? Silent, focused, and relaxed. That should be obvious. You want it quiet. If it's SSR, silent, sustained reading, students not allowed to talk. You have to decide, do you want to allow them to ask you, like, como se dice, what does this mean? Like, that might be helpful to some students. What's nice about CI novels, TPRS novels, they have glossaries in the back of all the books, right? So that have all the words in them. The novels that are coming out nowadays are usually including every single word, including el and la. Like, the will be in there, even though they probably acquired that, but just in case, right? Let's see. I allow my students to get books whenever they want to. So if they're in the middle of class, they don't like this, they go back and put it back. I'd rather have them find something they like than like start to hate this book, because as soon as they start hating things, they're done. All right, they can sometimes take several books. I want it to feel like that it's not schoolwork, because I talked about how schoolwork has kind of been the death of reading. So some of the things, don't do. Don't make it be homework, do be positive. That's the whole summary of this. This is part of the presentation, you can get it later. So, all right, you want students to have that safe place in school. All right, I do have a little more in that presentation. If you've got questions about it, I'm out of time.
We weren't able to get the link to work.
It didn't work? Okay, what did it tell you?
It says that
I
it's,
think you should check
sorry,
your cases.
not found or something like that.
Okay. Oh, you know what? When I copied it, I bet that font put it in all the uppercase. Okay, so here's what I'll do. There is a spot out in the main area that has like things you learned. I'll put a new link out there once I see what it is, and I'll write it for Sifert FVR link, and I'll put it out there, the bit.ly link. So I'm sorry, I didn't think about that. I changed fonts, but thank you. That's great to know. Okay, thank you very much. I have more to say, so if you have questions, come see me. I'll be happy to talk about reading forever. So, all right, thanks.
Also has stories for, yes. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Sorry. No. Oh, sure. All right. All right. I don't know. Feels silly.
Groupies now.
Probably reducing the value of the book, though.
Oh, yeah, right.
All right.